Sodium stearoyl oil, lactate. You get the point. Today on this episode of Black Tie Kitchen, we're gonna replace this with a very basic bread. You can find the ingredients anywhere in any store. That's the purpose of this bread. It's basically makeable anywhere you are in the world. Now, I do have to warn you, it's gonna take some time, but I 100% guarantee that time is worth it. When your house smells like bread and you pull that loaf out of the oven and you rip a chunk off and you put some butter on it and you take a bite out of that, you're gonna be glad you replaced this thing with this bread we're gonna make.
So we're gonna need 4 tablespoons unsalted butter, 2 tablespoons sugar, 1 tablespoon kosher salt, 1/4 ounce yeast, 2 cups of whole milk, 1/4 cup of water, 3 1/4 cups of unbleached all-purpose flour, 1 egg, a mixing bowl, a bread pan, thermometer, spatula, dish towel, measuring cup, a scale, a bowl, a brush, and a fork.
So the first thing we need to do is we need to get some warm water to proof our yeast. Now, read your label on the yeast because some of them have varying temperatures. This one I'm using here, it says between 120 degrees and 130 degrees. Now, I'm just using my tea kettle because it's simple and I don't have a microwave. So, I put this 1/4 cup, an ice bowl. We're gonna add our sugar. And we're gonna add our yeast. Now this is just a very basic bread yeast you can find at any store, any supermarket, nothing special. It's part of the reason this recipe is so unique, because it's so basic. And you really have to be careful with the temperature because yeast is a living thing, and if you don't get the temperature right, it's not gonna proof. Now, you're gonna let this sit here for about 10 minutes. Pour this in here. It looks like sprinkles that have been sitting out in the sun for too long. This yeast will immediately start to smell like bread. So we're gonna take that, we're gonna mix this really well. We want that sugar to dissolve. So we're gonna let this proof for about 10 minutes. You're gonna know it's working when you see bubbles and kind of like a foam on the top of it. If you don't see that, then that means your yeast is probably old and you probably need to start over. So while that's working, what we're gonna do is we're gonna melt the cup of milk with the butter and the salt in our saucepan. So we're gonna put this on low heat. We'll put the butter in, milk, and the salt. We're not trying to boil this, we're just trying to get this to melt. And dissolve the salt, of course. So you see this butter's mostly dissolved. We're gonna stop it there. We're gonna set it aside to cool. Now we want to let the milk mixture cool off to where it's no warmer than the yeast mixture. So our milk mixture has been cooling off now, and it's definitely cooler than our mixture. Or yeast mixture, that is. So we're gonna bring this over here. And this is where it's gonna start to get messy. So we're gonna grab our bowl. We're gonna grab 2 cups of the flour that we have separated. Now, you can measure flour out by using a measuring cup, but I highly recommend getting a scale. One, because my cup could be very different from your cup, and different flours have different densities, and well, metric is just gonna be better than just measuring by volume. You can have as much as a 40% variance in terms of like just volume. So 2 cups in here, we're gonna pour the milk mixture into our flour. The sink. And you wanna make sure you use a wooden spatula for this because if you try to use a silicone, you're not gonna have very much success because it's not strong enough to support mixing of the flour with the mixture. So we're just gonna incorporate this, mix it well. Now you could use a KitchenAid type of mixer, but to be honest with you, it's more fun doing it by hand. And it's not that much more work. And it gives you more sense of pride and accomplishment when you finally get to eat your bread. So we're gonna incorporate this until it's nicely incorporated. As you can see, our yeast is almost overflowing outside the cup. That means it's a healthy yeast. It already smells like bread, this yeast, oh my God. You're also gonna need a little bit more butter to butter the pan, so make sure to take it out of the fridge to let it soften a little bit. So you can see this is pretty well mixed. Now we're gonna mix in our yeast. We're gonna add another cup of flour. Now you're still gonna have some flour left over for when we actually go to knead it. So if you have it separated, don't use all of it. We're gonna use about 360 grams of the flour up until now. I'm just gonna slowly knead this, or not, so we're gonna slowly mix this in again until we have a nice smooth dough. This is getting to the point where the spatula is not gonna work too well. We're gonna have to actually use our hands. So we're gonna take the dough off the spatula. By the way, I recommend you don't use a spatula with holes. Now what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna flour your mixing surface. I'm just gonna use my cutting board here. Not too much, just enough so it doesn't stick. And I'm gonna dump this onto here. What we're gonna start to do is we're gonna start to knead this. Now, we're gonna flour this as we need to. If you've never kneaded before, basically just have to get into a rhythm. Just kind of fold over. I'm just trying to incorporate all this other mixtures here. So just kind of over, push with the heel. And we're gonna need this for about 10 minutes. So I'm gonna tell Alexa, set a timer. Alexa, timer 10 minutes.
10 minutes, starting now.
Now you don't want it to stick, so if you feel it sticking, just go ahead and sprinkle it with a little bit more flour. This is gonna get messy. This is also a very good date idea because one, it's messy. And what this is actually doing is just basically mixing the yeast into the rest of the dough. So I'm just folding over and then pushing with my heel. Over, heel. Make sure you wash your hands before you do this too. Part of the magic of making your own bread is, one, you get to smell it as it's baking, and two is you break a sweat while you're actually making it, which makes it all the better. Now, this dough is getting to the point where it's smooth and no longer sticky, which is how we know that it's good to go. This is where if you have an audio system like Siri, Alexa, or Google Home, and you need a timer, it's really handy because you know your hands are dirty. It's just nice to be able to say, so and so, set a timer for X amount of minutes. Now this here is good. I'm comfortable with this. See, not sticky. Or it would have stuck to my hands. My hands are no longer floured. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wash this bowl because we're gonna use it again. So now that we have our bowl, we're gonna take a little bit of that butter that we had from before that we took out while we were kneading the dough. Find a knife. What we're gonna do is we're gonna roll this butter around because you want the bowl to be nice and covered. We don't want our dough to stick to it. What we're gonna do is we're gonna put our dough in here. We're gonna roll it around. Make sure it's nice and covered with the butter. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna cover this with a dish towel for an hour to an hour and a half. You know it's a dish towel because it's very see-through. Want to see a magic trick? Where did he go? Okay, ow. My knees. Oh. So we're gonna cover this, like I was saying. So we're gonna cover this for an hour to an hour and a half. We're gonna put it somewhere warm and draft free. Now, if you don't have a place that's warm or draft free, just stick it in your oven. Just make sure not to put the oven on. So we've let our dough sit for an hour and a half, and as you see, it's basically doubled in size. So we're gonna put this aside. We're gonna take our pan, which is basically actually a meatloaf pan, and we're gonna actually butter it up with the butter that we took out earlier, because we want this to be nice and not allow our bread to stick. As you can see, having let it out earlier, it spreads really nice. See, this is very well buttered. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna take this, and we're gonna throw some flour on our cutting board again, because we're gonna need this again. There's some flour that's here from before. I'll punch this. See in there, it's perfect. Dump this out here. We're gonna knead it for about 3 minutes, so I'm gonna set a timer. We're just gonna knead it again. This time around, you can tell the dough is a little bit more bouncy. I'm breaking a sweat here. And I worked out today already. And our timer is up. What I'm gonna do here is I'm going to kind of shape it into an oval. Or a square, not square, like a circle, oval. I'm gonna let it sit for 4 or 5 minutes. 5 minutes because I'm in Florida. So Alexa, set timer 5 minutes.
5 minutes, starting now.
We're gonna let this sit and come back. So this has been sitting for 5 minutes, and what we're gonna do now is we're gonna gently pick it up, kind of mold it to the size of our pan, which is more of a loaf size. So I'm gonna kind of stretch it out a little bit, kind of bring it, pinch it on the bottom. Just gonna lay it in here. And what we're gonna do now is we're gonna let this double in size, which is gonna take anywhere between 45 minutes and an hour. So we're gonna cover this, we're gonna set it and forget it, and we'll be back in an hour. So our dough has been sitting here for another hour, and as you see, it's grown. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna make our little egg wash. So we have our bowl, crack our egg, but we're only gonna take the egg white. We're gonna put a splash of water in here, about a tablespoon, and we're gonna beat it with a fork. We're also gonna preheat the oven to 400 degrees. And now we're gonna use a silicone brush to lightly brush our loaf. Now I'm also gonna cut a slit in my loaf. You don't have to. So this is gonna go into the 400-degree oven in the middle rack for 20 minutes. Afterwards, you're gonna drop the temperature to 350 degrees and bake it for an additional 20 to 25 minutes. When you pop it out and you pop it out of the pan, tap it on the bottom. If it sounds hollow, you're good. If not, put it back in the 350-degree oven for another 5 to 10 minutes or until cooked. It's probably gonna be cooked, so you probably won't have much to worry about. So I've gone ahead and put one of my oven racks on my cutting board on top of my counter to let the bread cool. If you have a wire mesh pizza type thing, use that to let it cool. And that looks beautiful. As you see, this will easily pop out. And that's thanks to the well buttered pan. we're just gonna let this cool before we bite into it. So this is cooled off now for a little bit. Let's go ahead and cut into this. Let's see how it is. Very nice. I'm actually gonna cut a piece of this and have it with some butter. Oh, it smells delicious. Very basic white bread, as you saw. Incredibly easy to make. That's so good. It's so much better than this stuff. Oh my gosh. Time consuming, but so good. So good. I highly recommend it. You got a weekend, or you get home early from work and you just want to make some bread and you just want to have your house smell delicious and eat some unbelievable bread. Basic bread. Thanks for watching. My name is Dennis. Like and subscribe to the videos if you want to see some more. Leave comments down below. Until next time, remember, eat well.